I need you to walk into a room of 14 board members and convince them you don't really matter here. You've got 75 minutes. Think you can manage that? Or would it be simpler to just quit now? He said it like he was asking about the weather. Arms folded across his chest, shoulder propped against the doorway of my cubicle, like he owned the hallway, the floor, the very air I was breathing. I'd given this company 21 years of my life. 21 years of calming angry voices over the phone, of staying late after everyone else went home, of turning suspicious strangers into people who greeted me like an old cousin at a barbecue. And now this man wanted me to stand up in front of everyone who signed the checks and outline, in detail, why I was no longer worth mine. Before I get too deep into what happened, let me say this. If you've ever had someone try to write you out of a story you helped build, I hope you'll stick with me. If this hits you anywhere close to home, tell me in the comments what you would have done. And don't forget to subscribe, because nobody ever guesses how this ends. My name is Dana Cole, and I'm 49 years old. People usually shave a few years off when they guess, and I always tell them it's because I refuse to let this job carve bitterness into my face. At least that was true until about half a year ago. I walked into this industry at 25 with a degree in organizational communications, a secondhand blazer, and a point to prove. Back then, the company I joined was cramped into one tired building with flickering lights and ceiling tiles that looked like they'd survived a flood. We had maybe 60 employees on a good day. Now, the organization sprawls across 3 sleek sites with nearly 900 people on payroll. I didn't build all that, no. But there are pieces of that growth with my fingerprints all over them. I built the bridges, the relationships that brought in money, the trust that kept clients renewing their contracts even when other firms waved cheaper proposals in their faces. My title was Client Partnerships Director, which sounds about as exciting as filing tax returns, but what I really did was untangle human knots. I listened when clients felt ignored. I showed up when they were disappointed. I remembered what they said when other people weren't paying attention. Year after year, I became the person folks called when something critical was on the line. My daughter, Amari, used to tease me that I talked about my clients the way some people talk about cousins and aunties. She wasn't wrong. When one of my main contacts lost her mother, I bought a last-minute plane ticket and flew out for the funeral. Nobody told me to. Nobody reimbursed me for that flight. I just knew she needed someone to stand in the back row, no questions asked. When another client, high-ranking, always polished, was drowning in a messy divorce, I sat on the phone with her for hours after work. Not as a vendor, as a safe pair of ears she could lean on without gossip bouncing back to her office. Those weren't tactics. That was just how I treat people I decide to care about. The pay was solid. Not private jet money, but I was comfortable. After 2 decades, my salary respected my experience, and my bonus structure recognized the fact that I personally handled our 4 biggest accounts. Together, those 4 relationships brought in about 45% of the company's yearly revenue. Everybody in leadership knew it. Everybody understood that losing even one of those partnerships would sting. Losing all 4 would be a full-blown disaster. Then Malik Turner walked in. He was 33, give or take. Tall, crisp haircut, suits that looked tailored straight off the mannequin, and a polished MBA from some big-name program that specialized in turning people into talking spreadsheets. The kind of schooling that teaches you to call people resources and to see every problem as a data set to optimize. Our previous director, Ms. Carver, had been my mentor since my first year. When a health scare pushed her into an early retirement, she told the board my name should be at the top of the list for her replacement. The board smiled, nodded, and then decided they wanted someone fresh, someone who could modernize the department and drive efficiency. That's how Malik got my boss's chair. In his first week, he booked one-on-one meetings with everyone on the team. When my turn came, he sat across from me with a fresh notebook and a pen he never actually used. "Sum up what you do in 5 sentences," he said. 5 sentences for 21 years of work. I tried. I told him how I managed key partnerships, how my clients trusted me enough to call before they called anyone else, how they knew I'd give them the truth even when it wasn't convenient for us, how our contracts had survived leadership changes, billing errors, and technical outages because of that trust. He nodded slowly, didn't write down a single word. "So basically," he said at last, You're in sales. Just without measurable performance indicators. He smiled like he'd solved a riddle. Got it. Something shifted in my chest. Not anger exactly, not yet. More like the feeling you get when you realize somebody's looking at the same picture as you but describing something completely different. Over the next few months, Malik went to work. He rolled out new reporting systems. Every call had to be logged. Every email categorized. Every conversation tagged with outcomes. Time spent, follow-up steps. He built performance, dashboards that calculated revenue per hour of client contact, as if the value of a relationship could be boiled down to how much money you squeezed out of every 60 minutes. He stopped calling our long-term partners by their actual names. To him, they were just accounts. Account A is unhappy about pricing. Account C needs renewal support. It was like listening to someone talk about your cousins as Household 1 and Household 2. Morale started leaking out of the department like air from a slow puncture. 2 people quit in the first couple of months. Another transferred to a different unit as soon as a lateral opening appeared. Malik filled their chairs with new grads who could recite customer service models from textbooks but had never sat across from a business owner watching their life's work crumble. I tried to cooperate. I filled in his forms. I clocked my hours down to the quarter. I sat through his meetings where he tossed around words like synergy, disruption, and scalability like confetti. But at my core, I couldn't work the way he worked. My clients didn't live inside spreadsheets. They lived in real bodies with mortgages, payrolls, and panic under their voices. Trust doesn't fit neatly in a column. A few months into his regime, Malik called me into his glass-walled office. He turned his laptop toward me, a colorful slide deck already open, revenue charts, expense breakdowns, neat little bar graphs stacking people into cost categories. My name sat bold on one slide. My total compensation ringed in bright orange. You're an outlier, he said. He didn't bother softening it. Your base plus bonuses make you the highest paid person in this department by about 35%. The board wants tighter margins this year. Significant improvement. I didn't need a calculator to understand what that meant. The fastest way to make his charts look good was to cut the big orange circle with my name on it. My pay reflects the business I protect, I answered slowly. The partnerships I handle bring in close to half our yearly revenue. Correct. Sure, he said, leaning back, fingertips pressed together. But here's the thing. Those relationships exist primarily because of the company's reputation, not any one individual. Clients sign with us because our services perform, not because they like you personally. No disrespect. We both knew that last part was a lie. With respect, I replied, keeping my voice steady. That's not how it works from their side of the table. These relationships have outlasted product issues, billing crises, price hikes. They stay because the people I work with trust me to help them navigate all that. He gave me a patient, condescending smile. The kind teachers give kids who still believe in tooth fairies. Trust is nice, he said, but it doesn't scale. What we need are repeatable processes, junior staff who can be trained to handle accounts at a lower cost. That's how we grow. That's when I understood I wasn't being fired. Not yet. I was being phased out, one spreadsheet at a time. Malik was building a story, the aging, overpaid relationship manager resisting modernization. The narrative where my removal would look like smart strategy instead of what it really was, short-term cost-cutting that would put years of careful work at risk. So I changed my own approach. If he was going to document me out of the company, I was going to document exactly why that was a mistake. I started recording everything. Every crisis I headed off. Every renewed contract that almost walked. Every late-night call that turned a furious client into a calmer one who stayed. I filed my reports with more detail than he asked for, building a quiet, undeniable record of the value I brought. Because if they were going to decide I was expendable, they were going to have to step over a mountain of proof to do it. That was the moment I stopped letting Malik's story define me and started writing my own. Malik didn't come at me head-on after that meeting. He didn't have to. He started shifting pieces around me instead. First, he began sharing my accounts. Just for coverage, he said. In case you're out or on vacation. He assigned junior staff to shadow me on calls, framing it as mentorship. On paper, I was supposed to be training the next generation. In reality, I was walking my replacements through the front door of relationships I'd spent decades building. One of them was a 25-year-old named Jalen. Nice enough, but he spoke like he was double-parked, always 2 steps ahead of himself, always jumping in before clients finished their sentences. He started appearing on my calls with my longest-standing client contact, Tasha Green. Tasha and I had started out in this field around the same time, both of us young, black, and underestimated in rooms full of people who didn't expect us to know what we knew. We'd held each other down for nearly 28 years. By the 3rd call, Jalen was explaining basic terms to Tasha like she was a trainee. She stayed polite, but I could practically hear the side eye through the speaker. 15 minutes after we ended that call, my screen pinged with a message from her. Just 3 words. "What's going on?" My hands hovered over the keyboard for a long time. I couldn't tell her the truth, that leadership was sanding me down into a knowledge asset they could cheapen and replace. So I typed, "We're broadening the support team, so nothing falls through the cracks. You'll still have me." Even in text, I could feel her skepticism. Tasha hadn't survived nearly 3 decades in this game by taking anything at face value. "Dana," she replied, "if something is shifting, I need to know. My company runs on this relationship. I can't have some rookie who just learned the phrase vendor governance in a webinar fumbling with our contracts." "I hear you," I wrote back. "I'm not disappearing. Not yet." That yet hung there like a storm cloud. She saw it. I saw it. We both understood it meant more than I was saying. 2 weeks later, Malik called another meeting. This time, it wasn't just him. 3 other senior leaders sat around the table. HR, finance, and operations, faces composed, documents neatly stacked. "We've been evaluating the future structure of your function," Malik began, sliding a folder toward me. "We think we've designed something that works well for everyone." The word future hit my ears like a warning siren. Inside the folder was a glossy redesign proposal. My current position would be reimagined into a training role. For the next 12 months, I'd be responsible for teaching the junior team everything I knew about managing high-value partnerships. After that, I would transition gracefully into a part-time advisory contract. My salary, they explained, would be cut by 55% right away to reflect the new responsibilities and reduced revenue ownership. "This gives you space to ease into the next chapter of your life," Malik said, like he was doing me some grand favor. "More time with family, less stress. You've earned that after all these years." I stared at the pages calmly while my pulse hammered in my ears. I was 49. I had 0 interest in being eased into anything except maybe a massage chair on a Sunday afternoon. My daughter Amari was 23, still trying to get her own footing in her field. My idea of free time was a good book and a decent hiking trail, not early retirement and daytime TV. This wasn't a soft landing. This was an extraction, every piece of knowledge pulled out of my head while they slowly pushed me toward the door. "I need time to think," I said. Malik's jaw tightened, just enough to be noticeable. "Of course," he replied. "Take the weekend, but we'll need your decision by Tuesday. The board wants to see movement on the cost savings plan." That Friday evening, as I was halfway through reheating leftovers, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen on the screen in months. Lionel Brooks. Lionel ran one of our biggest client companies. We'd met back in college, long before either of us knew what we were doing. He'd stood beside my ex-husband at our wedding, and I had talked him through his first big job offer over greasy takeout at a wobbly dining hall table. Years later, when a merger nearly blew up his career, I'd helped him pick through the wreckage and stabilize his team. About 4 years ago, when his organization needed a new primary vendor for the services my company provides, he called me personally. Now his name was lighting up my phone at 7:40 p.m. on a Friday. I answered. "I've been hearing some things," he said, skipping any small talk. His voice had that edge it got whenever he was about to make a major move. "Rumors about changes over there." I shouldn't have been surprised. Our industry is a village. People bounce between employers. Information rides along with them. "There's new leadership," I said carefully. "New priorities. New priorities like cutting seasoned black professionals to bring in cheaper talent?" Lionel asked, voice smooth but loaded. "Something in that neighborhood," I admitted. He went quiet long enough that I thought the call had dropped. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from friend to executive. I'm calling because I have an offer. We're creating a new senior role, Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Vendor Strategy. I straightened up on the couch. The person in that seat would review all of our supplier relationships, he continued. Figure out which partners actually bring value and which ones we're just keeping out of habit. We need someone who knows the space, who understands people and numbers, and who doesn't get hypnotized by fancy decks and steak dinners. My heart thudded against my ribs. That's the serious job. It is, he agreed. And the pay will reflect that. Honestly, Dana, you're the only person I trust for this. You've never tried to upsell me just to hit a quota. You tell me what I need to hear, not what sounds good. I swallowed. You know my company is one of your largest suppliers, I said. That's a huge conflict if I'm still here. Only if you're still there, Lionel replied. If you're not, that conflict disappears. The weight of what he was saying settled over me, heavy, but as familiar as a winter coat. I'm not saying decide tonight, he added, but think about it. If they're already pushing you out, why let them finish the job? Come somewhere that respects what you bring. And between you and me, we spend enough money with your current employer that having someone who understands their inner workings sitting on our side of the table wouldn't exactly hurt during contract reviews. He didn't spell it out, but I didn't need him to. If I took the role, I'd be responsible for evaluating the very partnership that made up roughly 38% of my current employer's annual revenue. I'd be the one deciding whether that relationship should continue, shrink, or end altogether, with a full understanding of how dependent they were on that money. Send me everything, I said quietly. Job description, compensation, expectations. I'll review it and get back to you. The documents landed in my inbox first thing Monday morning. The pay package was generous, more than what I currently made even with bonuses. The title carried weight. The role came with autonomy and direct access to Lionel and the rest of his C-suite. Most importantly, it would put me on the other side of the table the next time my old company wanted to renegotiate terms. That afternoon, Malik scheduled a follow-up meeting about the transition. I asked every question I could think of. I pushed on timelines. I requested small adjustments to the proposed training plan. I played the part of the loyal, thoughtful senior employee trying to be reasonable. Then I told him I needed another week to decide. He didn't like it. I could see it in the tight line of his mouth. But he also couldn't press too hard without making it clear this wasn't a choice, so much as a shove. That week, Lionel and I spoke 3 more times. We talked scope, authority, travel, reporting lines. His team wanted someone in the seat within a month. They were gearing up for a full-scale vendor review in about 7 weeks, and my current employer's contract was, unsurprisingly, at the very top of the list. By Thursday, I'd run out of reasons to hesitate. I'm in, I told him. We agreed on a start date 3 weeks out. I did not share that news at my current job. Not with Malik. Not with HR. Not with anyone. If Malik was going to play chess with my career, fine. He just wasn't going to realize I was already on another board. 3 days later, Malik called me into his office again. He had that look, chin high, shoulders back, confidence radiating off him like he just solved corporate America. The kind of confidence men get when they mistake manipulation for strategy. I've been thinking about how to frame your transition, he began, motioning for me to sit. And I realize we have a unique opportunity. That word, opportunity, always meant trouble when it came out of his mouth. The board meets in 3 days, he continued. They want an update on the margin improvements I've promised. My thought is, you should be the one to present the reorganization plan. I blinked at him. Slowly. You want me to present my own role reduction to the board? Not a reduction, he corrected smoothly. An evolution. And yes, who better than you? You know your responsibilities inside out. You can explain how your tasks can be redistributed, how training the junior team will work, how we can maintain service levels with significantly lower personnel costs. He leaned back like he just pitched a brilliant team-building exercise. You presenting it, he added, shows alignment, collaboration. It helps the board see this as a natural next step rather than a forced change. I stared at him, and if I say no, his smile didn't budge, then I'll present it myself. But, and I'm only being honest here, it reflects better on you if you demonstrate that you're willing to support the transition. Future references, consulting opportunities, they depend on how these last weeks go. The message was as clear as a billboard. Cooperate and walk out quietly. Push back and let him torch your reputation on the way out. Then he delivered the same line he'd opened with the day he started undermining me. I need you to prove your own irrelevance to 14 board members in 75 minutes, he said. Can you do that? Or would walking out today be easier? He thought he had checkmated me. He thought the story was already written. I'll do it, I said calmly. I'll build the presentation. I'll present it myself. And I'll make it thorough. His grin widened like he just pulled off the perfect coup. Excellent, he said. Get me a draft tomorrow. I spent the next 3 days creating exactly what he asked for. 45 slides outlining every facet of my role. How my accounts could be divided among 3 junior staff members. How my strategy work could be offloaded to new committees. How my mentoring could be transformed into a standardized training program. I made it airtight, professional, logical, devastating. Then I created slide 46 and slide 47, both of which Malik never asked for. The board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday morning at 9:15 a.m. Malik emailed me the night before. Dress professionally. Keep the tone neutral. This is about showing alignment. Translation. Make your own execution look like a handshake and a smile. I arrived 30 minutes early. The boardroom was on our top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. People trickled in, directors, executives, longtime board members who'd watched me grow in this company. Some nodded at me with sympathy. Some avoided my eyes entirely. Everyone knew what this presentation meant. The CEO, Mr. Hollis, took his seat at the head of the table. He'd always been fair to me, but fairness had limits when numbers got involved. Whenever you're ready, Dana, he said. I connected my laptop. Slide 1 lit up the screen. Role transition strategy and operational efficiency plan. I began. For the past several weeks, leadership has asked me to evaluate my responsibilities and create a proposal outlining how my role can be restructured to reduce operational cost while maintaining client service levels. Malik nodded at me from his seat, pleased as a cat in the sun. I clicked to the next slide. Slide 2. My current responsibilities. Slide 3. Time breakdown. Slide 8. Overview of our highest value partnership. Lionel's company. I described how communication worked, how history informed trust, how the transition could be managed by a junior associate with proper coaching. Some of the board looked impressed. Some looked concerned. Malik looked triumphant. Slide 14 covered another major partnership. Slide 21 covered the last of the 4. By slide 29, I'd mapped out the entire 10-week transition timeline. What work would shift, to whom, and when. Slide 35 showed projected cost savings that made the CFO turn pages and whistle under his breath. This is excellent work, the finance director said. If implemented properly, these changes exceed our annual margin improvement goals. That's the intention, Malik replied, practically glowing. We're moving from personality-driven client management to scalable systems. Slide 39 covered risk mitigation. Slide 45 summarized everything. 10-week transition. Significant cost reductions. Manageable risks. Mr. Hollis leaned forward. Thank you, Dana. This is meticulously done. Several board members nodded. To them, the presentation was over. I watched Malik straighten his tie, already ready to claim credit for guiding the transition. I took a breath. There's one final item relevant to the board's decision, I said, letting my voice settle into something steady. I clicked to slide 46. The room went still. The screen showed a single document. A formal offer letter from Lionel's organization, dated 10 days earlier. The letter stated, Dana Cole will be joining our executive team as Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Vendor Strategy. It outlined my responsibilities, including overseeing a full review of all vendor partnerships beginning the following quarter. Our company was explicitly listed as the first partnership slated for evaluation. My start date, 19 days from today. Silence swallowed the room. Mr. Hollis leaned forward, reading faster and faster, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm to pure calculation. Malik went pale. The color drained from his face like someone had unplugged him. That, That can't be real, he stammered. It is, I said. I accepted their offer last week. My resignation letter will be in Mr. Hollis's inbox by noon. A board member who'd been around for years spoke first. Let me understand, she said slowly. You are joining our largest client, and your first major responsibility there will be deciding whether they continue their partnership with us. That's correct, I answered. Another board member jumped in, younger, sharper. And based on your own transition plan here, your accounts will be with junior staff who are still in training when you begin that evaluation. That is correct as well. Whispers rippled across the table. Malik finally found enough voice to choke out. This is unethical. You can't use internal information to undermine us. They're not a competitor, I corrected. They're a client, and I won't undermine anything. I will evaluate your performance the same way I evaluate every vendor, objectively. Mr. Hollis turned to Malik. Whose idea was it? He asked, voice clipped. To have her present this transition? Malik opened his mouth. Nothing came out, so I answered. 3 days ago, Malik told me I should prove my own irrelevance to this board, that it would be easier for me to walk out if I refused. Instead, I delivered exactly what he asked for. A finance board member did the math aloud. So if we proceed with this restructuring, we'll be destabilizing the very relationship she built, right as she takes on a role determining whether millions in revenue stay or go. And if we don't proceed, the risk analyst added, she's leaving anyway. Mr. Hollis inhaled slowly. Dana, he said, would you step outside while the board deliberates? I closed my laptop, nodded once, and walked out, leaving Malik sitting there looking like the ground under him had suddenly vanished. I waited in the break area down the hall, hands wrapped around a paper cup of lukewarm tea I never drank. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 40. Every tick of the clock made the reality sharper. Malik had walked me straight into a boardroom with a knife and didn't realize he'd handed me the handle. Finally, the door opened. Mr. Hollis stepped out, face unreadable. Dana, he said quietly, let's talk. We walked to a private office, one of those small glass-walled spaces meant for one-on-ones that don't need an audience. He shut the door gently. That, he said, lowering himself into the chair opposite me, was quite a presentation. Malik asked for thorough and convincing, I replied. I delivered both. He exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose like he was fighting off a migraine. I need to ask you something, and I want the truth. Was this retaliation? Did you accept that offer to get back at Malik? I took a moment before answering. Lionel offered me the role about 6 months ago, I said, right after Malik started restructuring the department. I turned it down at first. I wasn't ready to leave. I'd spent decades building something here. Mr. Hollis nodded slowly, but watching Malik dismiss everything I'd done, watching him replace trust with spreadsheets and call people accounts instead of names, watching him turn partnerships into metrics he could manipulate, I shook my head. That made the decision easier. I continued. I accepted Lionel's offer 2 weeks before Malik instructed me to create today's presentation. He simply never bothered to see me as a person long enough to ask what I wanted or what I was considering. The silence in the room deepened. So no, I concluded. Slide 46 wasn't revenge. It was just information. The fact that it wrecked his little narrative, that's the consequence of his own choices, not mine. Mr. Hollis sat back, absorbing that. When he spoke again, his voice was steadier. The board wants to make you an offer. I raised an eyebrow. For the next 6 months, we'd like to bring you on as an independent transition consultant. He slid a document toward me. You'd help us build an updated vendor relationship framework, share best practices, and advise leadership during the shift. Part-time, flexible schedule. You can do it alongside your new role without conflict. Then he added, we'll pay triple your current salary for the consulting period. I blinked. Triple. And Malik? I asked. He's being reassigned, Mr. Hollis said bluntly. Different division, no direct reports, no budget authority. He will not be involved in anything strategic. Terminating him outright would create unnecessary risk. But the board has agreed he should no longer be in a leadership role. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. The offer was generous. It would give me influence in both organizations. And it would show Lionel's company that I could navigate complex transitions with professionalism and integrity. I'll do it, I said finally, but I want full autonomy as a consultant. No interference from Malik or anyone trying to shape the narrative. Done, Mr. Hollis said. When I returned to my workspace to gather my things, Malik was nowhere in sight. Someone later told me he'd left the building the moment the board meeting ended. 3 weeks later, I started my new executive role with Lionel's company. On the very same day, I began consulting for my former employer. For 6 months, I straddled both worlds, helping my old company build better systems, interviewing their staff, evaluating their processes, and preparing objective assessments for my new employer's vendor review. The evaluation I conducted was fair, objective, documented. I looked at performance data, customer satisfaction metrics, service quality, risk exposure. When I finally submitted my report, my conclusion was clear. Continue the partnership, but under new terms. Reduced volume, lower pricing, stricter accountability, more oversight. My former employer lost about 28% of the contract value, but they kept the relationship. It was the best outcome for both sides. As for Malik, he lasted 8 months in that reassigned role before resigning. Word in the industry was that he moved to a much smaller firm, one where he could run his optimization experiments without the inconvenience of long-standing human relationships complicating things. 2 years later, I'm still in my role at Lionel's company. I manage strategic partnerships worth hundreds of millions. I negotiate contracts that determine entire departments' futures. I decide which vendors stay and which partnerships end. And I do it the same way I always have. With respect, with empathy, with a deep understanding that people, not metrics, build businesses. Sometimes old colleagues reach out asking how I did it, how I turned humiliation into leverage, how I outplayed someone who thought he held every card. They expect a dramatic story, a master plan, some trick I pulled at the last minute. But the truth is simple. I didn't beat Malik. I didn't have to. I let him beat himself, while I quietly built something better. Slide 46 wasn't revenge. It was timing. It was truth. It was the right information at the exact right moment. And sometimes, that's all justice really is. People always assume the final blow in situations like mine comes from some grand gesture, an emotional speech, a dramatic exit, a slammed door. But most real victories happen quietly, subtle, precise, almost ordinary. 2 years after everything went down, I still get messages from former coworkers who watched the whole thing unfold. Some ask how I stayed so calm. Some ask how I planned it. Most ask how I managed to turn what should have been a professional burial into a promotion, a raise, and more control than I ever had. I always tell them the same thing. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I understood the game. Malik thought he was playing checkers. I've been playing chess for decades. In my role now, I oversee partnerships that influence thousands of jobs. I read proposals that determine whether entire teams get funded or fall apart. I sit at tables where people finally listen, not because of my title, but because my track record speaks louder than anyone's assumptions. I walk into negotiations with the same principle that carried me from a cramped office full of ceiling stains to an executive suite overlooking the city. Relationships matter. Always have. Always will. Human beings aren't replaceable line items. Loyalty isn't a variable in a spreadsheet. And trust can't be mass-produced. I've watched too many leaders forget that. I've watched too many visionaries believe numbers alone keep companies alive. But numbers don't pick up the phone at 11 p.m. Numbers don't soothe frustrated clients. Numbers don't rebuild trust after a broken deadline. People do. That's what Malik never understood. And ironically, that misunderstanding is exactly what destroyed his plans and built my future. Every so often, someone from my old company reaches out asking for advice. They want to know how to protect themselves, how to navigate toxic leadership, how to stay afloat when someone higher up decides they've outlived their usefulness. I always tell them what I learned the hard way. When someone tries to make you complicit in your own downfall, the most powerful move you can make is to step out of their script entirely. You don't need to yell. You don't need to scheme. You don't need to match their chaos. Just move differently, smarter, Quieter. Earlier. The damage they plan for you becomes the trap they walk into. Slide 46 wasn't revenge. It wasn't even defiance. It was simply the truth, delivered at the exact moment the truth mattered most. And that's the thing about truth. Handled with precision, it's sharper than payback, quicker than karma, more devastating than any public takedown. Truth delivered at the perfect moment becomes justice. So if you've ever been in a position where someone tried to shrink your worth, silence your voice, or corner you into surrendering your own story, I hope you remember this. You don't owe anyone your quiet exit. You don't owe anyone your dignity in exchange for their comfort. You don't owe anyone permission to write your ending. You can choose your own moment, your own move, your own slide 46. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had someone try to make you participate in your own downfall, tell me in the comments how you handled it. And subscribe, because stories like these matter. They remind us that power isn't always loud. It isn't always obvious. And the people who think they're in control, sometimes they have no idea how far behind they really are.